Welcome, everyone. I want you to do me a favor. Just take a quick look around the room you're sitting in right now. Pretty much every object you see is the result of a massive, completely invisible collision. And in this explainer, we're going to unpack that exact collision. We're looking at what happens when massive, sweeping, global economic trends crash right into the heart of local culture. And we're going to look at this specifically through the lens of Latin American and particularly Argentine industrial design. It's a story about the objects we use every single day, how they're made, and ultimately what they say about who we are. So this brings us to a really fascinating, almost mysterious question. What do we actually understand by Argentine national design? Think about it. We live in a highly connected, hyper-globalized world where trends cross oceans literally in a matter of seconds. So how do you pin down the unique design identity of a single nation? Is it about the materials, the aesthetics, or is it something a lot deeper about how these objects are actually brought to life? Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of this whole complex landscape, here is our roadmap. We'll start with the design dilemma. Then we'll look at globalization versus local development. Third, we'll see how design acts as a strategy. Fourth, we'll explore Latin American identity. And finally, we'll tackle the specific challenge facing Argentine design. Starting with Section 1, the design dilemma, defining the undefinable. You know, when we try to define national design, we really shouldn't be looking for some static dictionary definition. It's all about its evolution. The author Ricardo Blanco actually identifies 3 historical stages of Argentine design over the last 70 years. First, you have the institutionalization phase. That's when the discipline was just finding its footing, setting up its very first schools. Second was professionalization, where design became fully integrated into standard mass industry. But the third stage, and this is the one we're in right now, is where things get incredibly exciting. Today, we're seeing this massive boom of young, independent designers who are taking control of semi-artisanal production themselves. They aren't just designing for giant, faceless factories anymore. They're auto-producing. It's very similar to the modern creator economy, blending smart economic strategies with a really rich cultural artistry. Now, what's really interesting here is how this national design breaks down across 3 unified components. Technologically speaking, Argentina design historically hasn't relied on highly sophisticated or super expensive materials. Productively, it's defined by just incredible resourcefulness. It's like a brilliant sort of industrial MacGyvering, right? Making absolute magic out of whatever happens to be on hand. And aesthetically, well, it has traditionally followed international trends, but it's evolved from purely functional shapes into these highly symbolic objects that communicate deeply with the user. So it's not really a single visual style. It's a shared attitude toward problem solving. Moving on to Section 2, globalization versus local development. The macroeconomic context. To really get why this resourceful, local approach is an absolute game changer right now, we kind of have to zoom out and look at the massive wave of globalization. As economists like Aldo Ferrer point out, this isn't exactly a new phenomenon. I mean, it traces all the way back to the 15th century transatlantic voyages. It evolved through the crisis of 1929, the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944, and all those industrial relocations in the 1970s. But the most intense phase, that hit in the late 20th century. Driven by the end of the Cold War and a massive, unprecedented tech boom, globalization became this all-encompassing force that dramatically altered technology, the economy, and culture all over the world. But look, while all that hyper-connectedness brought us some amazing advances, it also brought a heavily homogenizing impact. We're talking deepening inequality, severe ecological crises, a real loss of local autonomy, and overcrowded metropolises that completely rely on outside supplies. As a direct counter-response to all of that, we see the rise of local development. This is an approach that focuses on actual territorial growth. It's about balancing local ecosystems, acting as a democratizing factor, and, most importantly, actually meeting specific community needs rather than just catering to some faceless global market. Which brings us to a really crucial definition. Sustainable local development isn't just about making money. It's defined as economic growth that increases both cultural and material well-being while rigorously safeguarding the balance of our ecosystems. And guys, this matters immensely. Think about it. If our natural resources are depleted, human well-being vanishes right along with them. In a continent marked by some pretty stark inequalities, this sustainable, localized approach has emerged not just as an option, but as a necessary survival strategy. It's a viable alternative to globalized homogenization. Section 3. Design as strategy. Articulating the global and the local. And this brilliantly illustrates our next point. How do we actually achieve this sustainable local development? The answer is through design. Design isn't just about making pretty objects to stick on a shelf. It acts as a strategic agent for profound technical and social change. Academics Maffei and Villeray define this as promoting systemic innovation. Actually, that's just a fancy way of saying it's a complete top-to-bottom upgrade of how community works using its own local resources. A designer isn't just a stylist, they are a facilitator completely embedded within a community. They organize local practices, help interpret those global trends, and reorient local assets so communities can adapt and thrive sustainably. Now, if you're sitting there wondering, okay, but is this just academic theory? Well, no way. Just look at the numbers. 46%. According to the first National Design Survey back in 2007, 46% of firms in the most virtuous, highly performing business clusters in Argentina were actively incorporating design. They were hiring external design services and developing design-intensive products. To put that into perspective, it definitively proves that design is successfully, formally installed as a crucial wealth-generating tool in national industry. It's happening, and it works. Section 4. Latin American Identity. The collective subject. So, we've established how local design drives local economics, for sure. But how does an entire region metabolize its diverse culture to form a distinct aesthetic that spans across national borders? The Brazilian designer Felipe Taborda perfectly captures this. He states that the dynamics of creativity and culture in the region certify its incredible vivacity. Taborda points out that popular graphics and the local economy are just deeply, deeply intertwined. The region's products, its language, its music, its people, they all compose one of the richest poles of cultural identity in the contemporary world. Sociologist Alcira Argumedo takes this idea even further, explaining that the Latin American position conceives history from a collective subject. Think of it not as a melting pot where everything just becomes one uniform flavor, but more like a giant mosaic. This subject is composed of multiple social fragments and really rich juxtapositions. Rooted in the shared historical experiences of the region's people, this collective identity forms the absolute foundation of Latin American design unity. It creates strength precisely by respecting and integrating those fragmented local identities. Section 5. The Argentine Design Challenge, Reclaiming Local Identity. So, if Latin America has this massive, vibrant, collective identity, why does Argentina's specific design identity sometimes, struggle to stand out with the same distinct force as neighbors like Mexico or Brazil? It really comes down to a heavy historical tension. For a long time, Argentina maintained a heavy dialogue with US and European avant-garde trends. This huge influx of foreign aesthetics, combined with consumer habits that were essentially trained to prefer European styles, plus a flood of cheaper imported products, often diluted local efforts. Fighting against that is the true Argentine identity waiting to be fully tapped. It's one based on local needs, unique regional artistic resources, and endogenous potential, meaning growth that comes entirely from within the community itself. However, things really started to shift around the 2005 Summit of the Americas in Mar del Plata. As regional nations rejected the FTTA trade agreement and moved toward the creation of UNICER, it triggered a really fascinating design byproduct. Strictly from a macroeconomic perspective, this political pivot fostered a much stronger shared identity. It essentially pushed domestic markets to start appreciating and valuing their own craftsmanship and national products over mass-produced imports. So the crucial point is this: local design acts like an engine that metabolizes a society's culture. It isn't about completely rejecting the outside world, not at all. It's about smartly combining global technological trends with your own local resources and memories. When designers do this, they're doing so much more than just creating objects. They are generating equitable wealth, they're sustaining local ecosystems, and they're forging an incredibly resilient cultural identity. The everyday objects you choose to buy are directly connected to this massive, macro-level economic balancing act. Which leaves us with one final, absolutely vital question. Can local design truly thrive in a globalized world? Well, as we've seen today, the answer isn't just yes. It's that it absolutely has to. The creativity, resourcefulness, and cultural vivacity of local designers aren't just fighting back against global homogenization, they're actually offering us a blueprint for a more balanced, sustainable future. I really hope this explainer has given you a fresh perspective on the objects around you and all the hidden global forces shaping them. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and thank you so much for learning with us today.